if you're going to have some dinner rolls, for example, you can make those now and put those in the freezer. And then all you have to do is pop them in the microwave and warm them up. You can even freeze pies. Fruit pies are probably the ones that will survive better in the freezing, whether they're baked or unbaked. Even mashed potatoes could be made ahead and frozen, and then you just have to warm those back up.
With the holiday season just around the corner, now's the time to start planning those large family meals. In addition to finalizing a menu, you might need to clear out some space in the pantry, refrigerator, and freezer for storing extra food, the traditional turkey or ham, and any side dishes you prepare in advance. A Kansas State University food scientist says we also need to be practicing the 4 food safety principles: clean, separate, cook, and chill. On today's Sound Living, best practices for preparing holiday meals. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. Kansas State University food scientist and coordinator of the university's Rapid Response Center, Karen Blakeslee, says that having a plan and doing some advanced cooking and baking can help take some of the stress out of preparing a holiday meal. Karen, kind of hard to believe that we are already coming up on the holiday season. Seems like we just covered this not all that long ago, but from a readiness standpoint, there are some things that we probably should really get to thinking about right now, and one of those is just making sure that the kitchen itself is ready for people and extra food.
Yeah, that's always a good idea to plan ahead. So now's the time to start to do that, because I know there are families that are already planning what are we going to do for Thanksgiving? What are we doing for Christmas? So if you're hosting, think about, are you going to make everything or are you going to split it up? Divide and conquer. It makes life so much easier. So why not try to do that? One suggestion would be that you make the main course. So if that's a turkey, that's great. And that way you have your oven ready for just that. And then maybe everybody else could bring a side dish. And that way you can reduce the amount of time that you have to think about this and think about planning for this. You know, I would start with looking at your equipment, making sure everything is working right. The worst thing that can happen is your oven quit working when you just put the turkey in. And then you end up with a half-baked or raw turkey in the end. And we know that's not good eats. So make sure your oven's working right. Make sure the temperature is working right. Even with baking, it's a good idea to put an oven thermometer inside your oven. It's an appliance thermometer. They're not that expensive. You can find them just about anywhere. But they can give you a better idea of what the actual temperature is in your oven. So that way whatever you're cooking gets baked properly. What your oven dial says, what you set it on, is not always what it's going to be on the inside. And the other thing I recommend with your oven when you're getting ready to use it, whether you're roasting a turkey or baking bread, heat up your oven before you put things in there, because it takes a while for that oven to really get warmed up. I like to say a good 20-30 minutes. Let it get good and warm so that it's at the right temperature that you need it at. If you're going to be using small appliances, make sure those are working right too. And do you have enough space for all those small appliances too, especially if you really are going to make the whole meal? Do you have enough space to do that? Because sometimes your kitchen electrical power may not be able to handle all of that. So think about those things before you get down to the day of the meal.
As you're talking about really getting ready for the meal itself, there are some things that we maybe could do ahead of time and freeze.
Absolutely. You know, if you're going to have some dinner rolls, for example, you could make those now and put those in the freezer. And then all you have to do is pop them in the microwave and warm them up just to get the cold off of it. And actually, it helps freshen up the bread. One thing about baking is as soon as you take something out of the oven, it will start to go stale. That's just the natural process of baked goods as they journey through the baking and then as they cool down. The staling process already starts to happen. But when you heat it back up again, it reverses that staling. So it helps freshen them up, helps them taste like they're just almost right out of the oven. So bake those things now. Wrap them tightly, put them in a airtight container or a reclosable bag. get the air out of them so that they will stay in good condition during the freezing storage time. You can even freeze pies if you want to, whether they're baked or unbaked. We have some tips on doing that. Fruit pies are probably the ones that will survive better in the freezing, whether they're baked or unbaked. You could even just make the crust now and get that ready, whether it's baked or unbaked. You could do that and have that ready to go, depending on the kind of pie that you're making. But if you do freeze a whole pie, remember you got to give it time to thaw out. Don't wait till the last minute on that. And it's another one of those things that's a good idea to heat them back up a little bit just to refresh them. Cookies, those are really easy to freeze. Any of the main meal dishes, there's lots of those. Even mashed potatoes could be made ahead and frozen, and then you just have to warm those back up. That'll save you some time.
In addition to that, you were talking about kind of the thawing process, and that made me think of the turkey because we also need a lot of refrigerator space for at least about maybe 5 to 7 days ahead of Thanksgiving.
Exactly, and obviously, that's for a frozen turkey, and that's what most of us buy. And so plan ahead on that. The thawing time is going to depend on how big of a turkey that you buy. The estimate is 24 hours of thawing time for every 5 pounds. I would suggest extending that. In my experience, it takes longer. So for like a 12-pound turkey, I would suggest at least 5 days. It'll be in the refrigerator. Do not thaw it on the counter. The refrigerator is the ideal way to thaw it. You could thaw it in water. That's putting it in a tub, or if your sink is big enough to hold it, you could put the turkey in and run water over it and let it be submerged under the water. You want to change the water about every 30 minutes just to keep it fresh, keep it at a constant temperature. It does help thaw it out pretty quickly, but again, it does take some time too. You could cook a frozen turkey from frozen state, but it will take a lot longer, at least, time and a half at least. Probably not the most ideal way to do it, but in a pinch, if you're completely forgot about your frozen turkey, then it can be done. But really, the ideal way is putting it in your refrigerator, setting it on a tray or in a pan big enough to hold any drippings that might happen, put it on the bottom shelf, and leave it sit there. So you got to make space for it. Got to make sure your refrigerator is big enough for whatever size of turkey that you're getting. So that's another reason why it might be helpful to get some things done now, freeze them, and get those out of the refrigerator space.
I got to ask, when it comes to actually baking the turkey, is this something that we can rely on those little pop-out thermometers for?
Yeah, those really only go about an inch or two deep. So they really don't get to the internal part of the turkey at all. It is an indicator. I wouldn't rely solely on that because they tend to pop up only in that area, but down inside the turkey is still not done yet. So they tend to pop up sooner than you expect, I guess. So really the best way to make sure that your turkey is at the proper temperature is to use a food thermometer and put it in the thickest part of the bird, and that's usually in the leg area. Make sure it doesn't hit any bones when you do that. Check a couple places. There's all kinds of food thermometers out there. You could even use one that's a probe that you stick into the turkey before you put it in the oven and leave it in there, and you can set the final temperature on the device itself to 165, which is the ideal temperature for any kind of poultry. Then when it registers that temperature, it'll set off an alarm for you. So you know that it's hit that temperature. So that's kind of an easy way to check it. So get a food thermometer. I like to call it your best friend in the kitchen. And it's not just for cooking meat products. You can use it to check the temperature of baked products too. I talk about this a lot during county fair season and the temperature of baked goods, knowing when they're done. And using a food thermometer is another way to check for doneness on baked goods, like for quick breads or muffins or yeast breads or whatever. Stick that thermometer in there and it should reach about 200 degrees. That's kind of what you're looking for on a baked good. So use that food thermometer. It can be very helpful, and in a lot of ways it can really help you make a lot of safe food.
And how long do we want to let the turkey rest before carving?
Yeah, at least 10 minutes or more. It doesn't even hurt to even leave it set covered for 20 minutes or so. And it just helps the juices reincorporate back into the turkey, and you'll end up with a juicier turkey. If you take it right out of the oven and start carving it, it's going to be dry, and that's not very good turkey. So take it out, cover it up, set it aside, let it rest, and then get everything else ready, and then you can carve your turkey.
At any time we're preparing food, we want people to follow all of the food safety rules.
Absolutely, and there's 4 simple steps: clean, cook, chill, and separate. The cleaning part, number 1, wash your hands. Use that soap and water, that 20 seconds. Use good warm water and soap suds and scrub them, rub them, and get under your fingernails. You'd be surprised how much stuff is trapped under your fingernails. So get in between your fingers. Wash your hands really well before you start handling any food, during the preparation process, and even before you handle any ready-to-eat foods. Wash those hands, because that can really save you a whole lot of problems. And then clean as you go when you're prepping the food. Get your dirty dishes out of the way. If you got room in your dishwasher, put them in there or wash them as you go. It just helps keep up on those dirty dishes as you're prepping the meal. The cooking part, I've kind of touched on that with the food thermometer. Again, it's really important. Use it and check your products in a couple spots. Make sure that it's reaching the right temperatures. And just a reminder on what those temperatures are. 145 is for steaks, roast, chops, or fish. 160 is for ground meats like ground beef, ground pork, ground lamb, etc. And then 165 is for any kind of poultry and any leftovers. So it's important to reheat leftovers properly also. So it's 3 temperatures to remember. And then chilling, keeping foods that need to be cold. They should be below 40 degrees. And as you're serving your meal, if you've got a buffet going on, remember the 2-hour rule. Try not to let foods stay out of their temperature area, whether they're cold or hot foods, any more than 2 hours. That temperature danger zone between 40 and 140 is where we want to try to keep food out of, because that's where bacteria really like to grow and multiply. It's nice warm conditions for them. And so we want to eliminate any problems that way. Temperature abuse on food is probably next to not washing your hands is probably the second most common problem. People just not handling their food properly. So be mindful of that. And then separate, keeping your raw foods away from your ready-to-eat foods. And this brings me to the point of, I know lots of people like to rinse off their turkeys before they cook them. There is no need to do that. And actually, you're inviting more problems by doing that, because water can splash any turkey juices around your counter area, or if you've got any ready-to-eat food sitting nearby, it could even splash over there. So you're just inviting problems by doing that. There is no need to do that. The cooking process will take care of any kind of bacteria that may be present. So just take it out of the wrappings and put it in the pan, and you're ready to go. So keep those 4 steps in mind as you're doing any kind of cooking, not just for the holidays, for any time of year, to make sure that you serve a safe meal.
And Extension and the Rapid Response Center both have really all the information you need.
Yeah, I've got information on my Rapid Response Center website. We also have a Extension Food Safety website, which is ksre.ksu.edu/food safety, all one word. So there's a lot more specific information about food safety on that particular website, which you can get to from my Rapid Response Center website. And that one is www.rrc.ksu.edu.
That's Kansas State University food scientist Karen Blakeslee. Again, for more information, visit ksre.ksu.edu/food safety or the Rapid Response Center at rrc.ksu.edu, or you can contact your local Extension office. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman, and this is the K-State Radio Network.